Welcome, everyone. My name is Lin Sok, and thank you for joining us for tonight's edition of Facebook Live. We will be talking about mind over property, overcoming your limiting beliefs about real estate investing. A limiting belief, all it is, it's a belief that in here restricts you, and that stops you from doing certain things in life. I know in both my personal and professional experience, I run into clients, friends, people in my network who want to invest in real estate, but that limiting belief in here holds them back. So tonight we're going to talk about mind over property. And we have with us Angela Negro, real estate investor and real estate broker with Royal LePage with us. Welcome, Angela.
Thanks, Lynn. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So before we get into it, can you just briefly share with those from my network who are watching, who is Angela?
So, I'm a mix of different things. I have a background in engineering, so I actually graduated from engineering, and I've worked in industry for 17 years as a procurement professional, and most recently a director of procurement. And back in February, I took a leap, I took a chance, and decided to pursue entrepreneurship as a real estate broker. It was something that kind of was always at the back of my mind, but limiting beliefs kept me safe in my little box as a professional in a company. And I was lucky enough to be able to take this opportunity to pursue this goal of mine. And I'm really, je suis ravie, like they say in French. Honestly, it's been a dream of mine to do it. But it's taken a lot of work, a lot of prep work to be able to mentally kind of sustain that. So now I've started a real estate brokerage services business, and I'm under the Royal LePage banner with Royal LePage Village out of Point Claire, NDG, El Perot, and Hudson. And my entire mission, at least right now, is to support a lot of first-time home buyers, but also first-time investors. I feel a real connection with that group of people because I've been there. I bought my first property when I was 27 years old. I made a ton of mistakes. And I bought, we made our first investment property, actually our first combined home together, my husband and I, we made that into our first investment property. So a lot of limiting beliefs between my first property, the upsizing opportunity, and things I have to continuously work toward to add to our real estate portfolio. So I'm very passionate about real estate. Honestly, in the last 5 years, I think I've really realized the compounding effect of the leverage that you get through real estate and the benefit and the flexibility that it can really bring to your life. However, I can't stress enough that you need to make sure that you have the proper information to do that. And before you can even get there, you have to have the right mindset, the right outlook in order to take those big steps. I mean, buying your first property, especially today with the prices that they are, is extremely intimidating. And buying your first investment property or converting to a first investment property takes a different mindset shift in order to be able to manage sort of like a little business, where you have customers and you have a service that you're offering and you have an asset that you have to maintain. So grosso modo, that's who I am and what I do.
Well, listen, real estate investing is a business. I mean, it's not fun and games and, pretty social media posts. It is a business. So we're going to get into that. But you touched a lot on limiting beliefs, and that's why we're here. So let's talk about limiting beliefs for a second. So both of us have heard our fair share of limiting beliefs. I mentioned it from clients, from women in my Women in Money Montreal community, just from casual conversations over dinner. It's always the same thing. It's I can't afford it. I'm priced out. I'm not ready. I'll never get approved for a mortgage. It's always the same excuses over and over. What do you tell people who share these limiting beliefs? And you've been in their shoes, so whatever you give to them as a response, you've lived through this. So what do you tell people who feel this way? They want to invest in real estate, but I just can't do it.
Yeah, it really takes a big leap at the beginning to kind of get over that. And what I'd like to start with telling people is just try to understand where those beliefs are coming from, right? Because limiting beliefs are they're fabricated, they're created over time through our own experiences, whatever our circumstances have allowed us to live and be witness to, right? So if we've never seen somebody done it, if we're the first people, or if we're comparing ourselves to other people, right, without any real understanding of everyone's different situation, it can create all of these negative perceptions or barriers to us being able to see ourselves doing those same kinds of things. We'll rationalize why that can't be us. So the first step to being able to shatter some of these limiting beliefs is to allow yourself some grace, really, and to understand that, it takes some education. It takes some knowledge to be able to understand, okay, what can I do to make this possible? What is possible for me? There's a whole self-awareness process that you still have to go through, especially if, some of these limiting beliefs can be very debilitating for people. They become very scared, anchored in a scarcity mindset, right? Especially, you and I were talking before, I've lived through financial trauma, which kind of followed me for a long time. And it's something I didn't really address. I addressed it by just hoarding money. If you could, like I saved everything, all of my money all the time. I was scared to spend it. And actually in my LinkedIn post, I mentioned that, I was living in the US right after the 2008 fallout.
I'm going to
And
cut you off because I'm going to ask you that question later on.
oh, okay. So you want me to save it. But
Yeah.
you're just kind of sitting on the precipice all the time of these big decisions and you freeze. And that's what a limiting belief will do. It will try and keep you safe. And so the first thing I always tell people is let's explore that. Let's explore what your goals are. What is it that you want to achieve? Before we can even say if it's possible or not, what do you want to achieve? Do you want to buy a residence, your first residence to live in it? Short period of time? Do you want to buy your forever house? Do you want to, in the future, buy investment properties? Like, what is your horizon and your long-term view of what you want to achieve? And some people find difficulty in that. It's hard to look far down, the timeline. And sometimes we live more in the now as opposed to planning. We're all very good with living in the now. But when you're planning for the future, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. You're responsible for the plan, you're responsible for the actions in that plan. But if you're not educated or you don't have a goal, then you can't get educated on how to achieve it. So if you outline your goal first and you get educated on it, then you could start to see, and that kind of gets to step 3, the defeating the inner ostrich is then you can start to see, okay, where am I sort of ignoring some of these actions that I need to take? Am I doing all I can to be able to save the amount of money? Do I know all my options on financing? Lynn, you must get a ton of questions or not on financing, but financing is, people always think conventional, right? Oh, I need the 20% down. That's been the very traditional avenue for a lot of people, but there's all kinds of financing options today, not just for first-time home buyers, but for any property investors.
Well, when Women in Montreal held the International Women's Day event, Vivian Zabuga, who's a real estate investor, she wasn't able to mention this when she was one of the panelists. She wasn't able to mention this when she was speaking, but she had told me afterwards. She's like, you know what? I completely forgot to tell people. So for those who weren't there, Vivian Zabuga is a real estate investor who only invests in luxury condos, and she was telling about she was going over her first purchase, which was a condo, and it was $217,000, which isn't much, and it wasn't that long ago, but it was all that she could afford. And she had mentioned to me to top it off, she actually had to go to a private lender in order to get her first mortgage
Mhm.
for that condo, for that little $217,000 condo, but it was temporary because she was finishing her CPA designation. So she was going from student to, going into
Right.
her career in a short period of time. Mention private lending to the average person,
Yeah.
and most people just look at the rates and freak out. But it's an opportunity.
Right.
It's a strategy. So you're right. And I actually have a Zoom on Tuesday, next Tuesday coming up on down payment strategies. We'll go over the conventional ways, but also looking at our RSP loans.
Right.
federal government tomorrow officially will reveal all the details, but basically allowing first-time home buyers to borrow 60,000 out of their RRSPs. It's a loan to yourself, and a lot of people say, "Oh, but you have to pay it back." Well, you're paying yourself back. You're funding your retirement, so it's not
Right.
it's not a loss. It's not
Exactly.
as if you're paying back furniture, so it's still an asset. But anyways, yeah, exactly. People are I do get a lot of questions about down payments. People aren't doing it right anymore. We are very good at living for now. We are very, very good at living for now, but living for these big financial decisions in our lives, not so much. We could go away to Fiji and Bali, 3 times, 4 times over a year, but we can't save up for the down payment towards a property that we say that we really want. If you really want it, set it as a goal and make a plan for it and make it happen.
Yeah. And I think the education piece, that's why that really is the first step is to understand, what have other people done? How have other people done it? How have they achieved those goals? Talking to as many people as you can, in order to just learn about different strategies. There's a lot of different groups, a lot of different organizations that offer classes. Like, I know it sounds stupid and academic, but the thing is that sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And by only relying on the information that you and your circle of friends or whoever is like in your immediate sphere knows, you're limiting yourself in terms of what is possible. And I mean, I'm a true believer in real estate, so maybe I'm biased, but the outlook for real estate is very good. It's very solid. It has increased a lot over the last just 4 years. I know the pandemic sort of accelerated a lot of that growth due to some of those unforeseen circumstances and global influences, but it still has an appreciative factor, and it's the only asset or only investment class that you can pay for a fraction of the asset and get the appreciation for the value of the entire asset. And I think that this gets lost on a lot of people because they don't understand the the numbers, right? Like might not understand all the nuances of that. But when you start putting pen to paper and then understanding refinancing strategies and how you can leverage that to buy other properties without impacting your life,
Mhm.
your mortgage payments can stay the same. If you're 5 or 10 years in, you're just pulling the equity out, buying an investment property, and then tax deducting the interest on that loan for the
Mhm.
investment from the income. So oftentimes you can actually end up with some overall benefits. Obviously, the caveat there is it depends on everybody's individual situation, but education really is the key. And also making sure that once you are educated is, do you have the right people around you to help you get there, right? Like in real estate, people think, oh, I can do it myself, right? I can buy a house myself. I could just go to my bank guy that I've known for 15 years and he'll give me a mortgage. But there's value in seeking out different types of professionals to support that journey. Brokers have a unique perspective on the market, and different brokers have different perspectives. So it's important that you really interview people that they are able to support you in the particular journey that you're looking for. Investments of short-term rentals in the Eastern Townships, not my thing. Helene Hivros, probably more appropriate for that kind of thing, right? But there's people with special skill sets that can be leveraged. And I think that it's key that we build that community of people around us that we can tap into, their experiences and their expertise to help us achieve our goal. Mortgage lending is another thing. Brokers, 100%, right? And finding the brokers that you work well with. Inspectors, tax advisors, understanding what the tax implications are for ourselves and for our financial security and future, right? How do we maximize our financial potential? It's by leveraging all of these people, gaining the information that we need, and to help us slowly start seeing how we can work past some of these limiting beliefs, right? I can't afford it. Oh, well, why can't I afford it? I'm thinking I need 20% down. Oh, but Lynn said, actually, I can do it with a 5%. And this is the overall impact of what it's going to mean for me 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And understanding your risk profile is also helpful, right? Like, okay, maybe I'm not ready to jump in and buy a 12-plex, right? Maybe you want to take a couple of steps in between.
Even if
We,
you have the money, even if you have the money and the financial situation for it, it doesn't mean you
right,
want to take
right.
that risk.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
you'll buy 6 luxury condos instead or whatever,
Right.
just
No, and that's it. Like everybody has their own profile, their own lifestyle needs as well, right? Not everybody wants to manage a 12-plex out in Saint Eustache. It doesn't fit with their lifestyle, but maybe they're always in the Eastern Townships and they love to have a collection of little cottages that they want to rent out. Or somebody just wants to start with their little first, home, whether it's a condo or a townhome. And that in and of itself is a huge kind of mental hurdle that you have to get over, that you're going to spend a substantial amount of money and that it's, going to require a different kind of management. Right now, you're managing your own place and it's an asset and it's something that you have to take care of so that when you do go to resell it or leverage it in the future, you can get the maximum amount of value from it. So there's, it all kind of comes together, and that all these things are part of what we need to do to shatter these limiting beliefs.
exactly. Definitely need a team. And I don't know why anybody would want to try to do it on their own. There's so many aspects of taxation, of, mortgage lending. It's not just going to the person, your guy at the bank. I'll tell you something, working it as a mortgage broker, there's no loyalty anymore when it comes to your bank. None. And I'm just saying this across the board. They're about as loyal as your cell phone company or your cable company or your internet company. Everything is fine until it's not, right?
Yeah.
Like it's all about competition. And yeah, definitely, real estate investing, there's so many ways to invest in real estate. One nice thing before we get into our next topic is during the last year and a half, where it's been with the height of interest rates, I know I've helped a lot of clients who were first time home buyers. They started off with their starter home and they wanted to upgrade. And in our conversations, just kind of threw the idea out there. Have you thought of, instead of selling your starter home, which is what everyone, when you start a family, you're not thinking of investing in real estate. I just throw out the question, have you ever thought of renting out home A, starter home A, and using the equity that you've built, because it's appreciated so much in value, in order to purchase your bigger home. That way you keep your savings, whatever you have in your TFSAs, whatnot. You
Mhm.
have a rental property and an appreciating asset, and you get to write off a bunch of things when you file your income taxes, and it's worked out. It's great, something they would have never thought about because I'm just a quiet family raising
Exactly.
my kids. And
Exactly. And I'm a huge advocate of that if people can afford it. Not everybody can qualify for the debt level that would take. But that, always takes me to a different topic of, advocating for yourself and maximizing your revenue. Because as regular individuals, who may not own huge organizations or companies, the biggest revenue source that we have is our job, right? I've worked in corporate for 17 years and my entire focus was, how do I get new skills? How do I get into higher levels of management? How do I increase my top line so that I can keep investing more and more as I continue on throughout my life? And I think that these are all great options. Keeping your starter home, if you can, is a fantastic sort of kept secret
yeah.
of the industry, because it takes usually a lot less effort from the first house to the second than it can in the future, especially if you want to buy maybe a separate investment property and the money is already there. You've already appreciated that asset considerably. You've already paid down a lot of that debt, and you can simply just pull it out as opposed to dipping into other savings that you might have.
And your home. You know that, someone warned you that you need to replace the roof in a few years and all that good stuff. So yeah, definitely if you have a starter home and are thinking of upgrading, it's the numbers. Not everybody qualifies because now you're at a higher debt level, but it doesn't cost you anything. Check to see if it works, how much it would be. Do you have to dip, do you have to pay out of pocket? How much is it? Is it sustainable? And then it's either yes or no. Yes, I could do it. No, we're going to sell it in order to upgrade to our bigger home. So we talked about our own limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
but the people around you, can be the worst. And I'm talking family, friends, coworkers, everybody has their opinion. What do you do when everybody has their negative opinion? I know someone whose uncle lost everything in real estate. The real estate market is going to crash. Everything's so expensive. You can't invest in real estate. It's too complicated, all that stuff. What do you say to them?
It's hard. It's hard to work through some of that because it's not your own limiting belief sometimes, but it can amplify any doubts that you might have about yourself. And I'd say that um, that's why education is so important, but also surrounding yourself with people that are trying to do or doing the same things that you want to do, or maybe further ahead than where you even thought you could go, just to kind of give that representation, right, of what you are trying to achieve. I find, I mean, at least for me, listen, yeah, I went through financial trauma as a young adult, throughout my teens and into young adulthood. And it sticks with me today. Like, anyway, I have some stories, but, it's something that is very difficult to get over. And one of the things that I had to do at one point was just kind of dissociate myself from my parents' experiences and trust that I could find the examples of people that I could follow, that I could find the professionals and figure whatever it was out. Now, I bought my first property at 27, and I have to say that that was a complete cluster because I had initially started out with the intent of buying a multiplex and had made offers on all kinds of multiplexes. And, for all kinds of reasons, none of them were quite good enough for me. And my parents were like, look at the bad experiences we've had. We had to sell a building, and then look at the tenants we've had in our triplex. Like, you don't have the time, or that you shouldn't have the desire to live through that. And I was like, okay, like I understand, but they really influenced me a lot. And they're like, maybe you should just wait and see. And so I downgraded what I wanted to do from, five plexes down to four plexes and then down to duplexes. And then I ended up with a bungalow. And I was like, what am I going to do with this bungalow? So I bought this bungalow. And the only reason I was able to keep this thing was because I told my parents I was going to live in it. So I said, I could have bought a condo, but instead I bought a little single family home. It's not too far from you guys, like literally 3 minutes. So they kind of, it appeased them at the time. But I have to say, it wasn't well thought out. The numbers didn't work like they did on the multiplexes. It was a completely different asset that I wasn't familiar with how to work and the way that a multiplex could. And so I was stuck with this thing. And throughout the whole time, I was learning at the same time, right? And then having to hear my parents kind of every single time something went wrong, they're like, we told you, like, why do you need these headaches? You don't need these headaches. But to kind of get through all of that negative speak, sometimes the only way to the other side is through, right? Is taking that courage. But I had some contacts that had been property investors, and they were offering me some support to deal with some issues that had come up. And they weren't as big as I had maybe made them out to be when they were happening to me. And it was all thanks to these people that kind of guided me through these situations, which is why, yes, you can have these close people of yours influencing you or projecting their own fears onto you, but it's important to have examples or friends or acquaintances of people that are doing the complete opposite of what those naysayers are doing and that are actually working along the path that you want to go on. And that gives you sort of that positive reinforcement, gives you the motivation to be like, oh, this is possible. And to give you experience from other people who are like, you know what, that bathroom leaking into the basement happens all the time. It's not a big deal. Your foundation's not going to break. You're not going to need to spend $30,000. Just patch up the ceiling and have a nice day. So I think that that's really critical in dealing with that negative criticism is find your people. Find the people that will be the positive reinforcement that you need.
And even aside from real estate investing, just in life in general, people are going to have their opinions about whatever it is that you're going to do. Real estate is a business, so in the business world, it's the same thing. We come up with a business idea. What do? We run and tell our family and friends,
Right.
and you know, well, we all know what happens with that. Sometimes they're not doing it to crush you. They feel that they're helping you and they're trying to save you when they're really putting their own limiting beliefs and experiences onto you. Um, but we need to go out and do what we want to do and learn from our own mistakes. Imagine you never bought that bungalow. You wouldn't be sitting here right now talking about your other real estate investments. You
Yeah,
probably might have never went into it.
exactly. I bought properties since then, sold properties since then, like, and I'm still in it and I still strongly believe in it. And honestly, I look back fondly on that experience because it, makes me roll my eyes at my parents, but also I'm kind of proud of myself for still doing it anyway and still taking the learnings from that and getting better at it. I could tell you after I bought that bungalow, I made all kinds of friends. So, friends that guided me in the future on better investments and different ways to leverage real estate. And it's been great, honestly. But the key really is to surround yourself with the right people, the right professionals, but also the right motivators for you, the people that are going through the same experiences or have already gone through it that can temper those negative or those limiting beliefs, right? Who are like, you know what? It's not as complex as you think. I know a guy who's done this and he did it this way and it's super accessible and he knows a guy to get that done. That is so powerful. And that's
Yeah,
why the groups that I've joined along the way have been instrumental in making those connections and just helping to reduce some of that negative belief that we might still be projecting onto our actions.
of course. And just a little footnote, you mentioned the small bungalow as your first purchase. Probably, and I don't know the story behind it, but probably one of the reasons why it was a flop. Did you rent it out or did you actually live in
I
it?
never ended up renting it out. Nope. I was so scared. And actually, I ended up meeting my husband, and he also had a property that he had bought to flip. And so we decided to sell that bungalow and then do another investment. So that was a decision we made at the time. In hindsight, I feel like I should have kept it. But at the time, I was just, I was just overwhelmed.
Well, the reason why I brought it up is because traditionally, when we think of real estate investors, we think of multiplexes, kind of like
Right.
when we're purchasing. The funny thing is now it's kind of a different story, and so what I'm seeing a lot is that rents are skyrocketing, and the housing market has priced a lot of people out. Number one. Number two, salaries aren't as high. We have higher debt ratio. So a lot of people just can't buy because they carry a heavy debt load. So all they are able to take on is rent, but they could pay higher rents. So what I'm seeing is that purchasing like a starter bungalow as a rental property, you can purchase a few $1,000s as rents, as opposed to multiplexes where you have that issue with tenants who've been there for a long time and you can't
Yeah.
necessarily rent evict them, depending on the situation. So, purchasing homes for families is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, have to look at the numbers, but it's a different market because the rents are so high now compared to previous years.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually kept our the home we ended up moving into, my husband's intended flip. We ended up moving into that one. And then when we moved out, we kept it as a rental and it's been a beautiful investment, honestly. I'll never let it go. I love that house. But it's the starter home, the single family homes are doing well also because of affordability issues with people being able to buy the single family home, but wanting to live in one. And
Mhm.
that's what I love about actually that house is all the tenants we've had in there have been amazing. I also attribute that to experience in tenants. My parents, I've had a lot of experience helping them manage applications from tenants for all of their properties. And, choosing the right ones is important. But all the ones we've had, the families, we get really attached to all of them and we keep in touch. And it's really a beautiful thing. But we have to remember that real estate is still a people business, right? These are humans that need to live in these places. So the rent evictions are a very capitalist way of approaching real estate. And I mean, listen, at the end of the day, people that are putting down lots of money to buy these bigger places, these bigger plexes to rent out, they need to make their ROI, their return on investment, in order to pay whatever partners they might have. A lot of them often do have partners that
Yes.
they go in with on these things. So there's a little bit of, business that happens in that regard. But my approach is very different. We're very much more tenant leaning. We like to offer a safe and quality place to our tenants. And like I said, they become family. So, I mean, we love that approach, and people need a place to stay. And
Mhm.
affordability is an issue. If you can work on the affordability side, if you can explore your options, there may be some options, but you don't need to start again. You don't need to buy that single family home right off the bat for yourself either, right? You
Mhm.
can start with a smaller townhome. There's great developments all over the GMA, and even a little bit outside, accessible through REM, etc. I mean, there isn't one way. And I
Yeah.
think that's another limiting belief, is that we all think, of the more common tracks for all of these things, but the reality is that there's always a different option, and it's never too late. So it's just about understanding what you want and then finding somebody that can help you get there, or explain to you how you can get there. And then you could figure out a plan based on what that path looks like.
Exactly. And for the renoviction issue that's going on here, like I'm a big picture thinker. So I'm always thinking 5, 10 steps ahead. And as long as we, the average, working class people, the longer that we have those limiting beliefs, the longer and stronger these these big real estate conglomerates come in and buy these multiplexes, and not even multiplexes anymore, like we're talking about smaller plexes,
Yeah,
and evicting people. And the longer we have those limiting beliefs, they're going to stay. They're going
exactly.
to stay, and that's just going to suppress us even more. So we need to get over it. And if we're in a position of, maybe we're a little bit older and we don't have the energy to start investing in real estate, if you have children, if you have nieces or nephews, if you work with younger people, if you are around other people who are in that age group who wants to maybe take a risk, tell them, hey, stop screwing around with your money, start putting money aside, start investing, start buying these properties, so that we could get rid of, we won't name any names, but these inks and LLCs who keep
Right.
purchasing multiplexes for families, or multi-unit apartment buildings for that are designed for families.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. And it's become a huge problem, honestly, that. And that was always one of my things. Actually, one of the limiting beliefs and motivators that I used for myself is, well, I have a different way. I have a more compassionate way. And if I don't do it, then no one, right? Like, it'll be one less person kind of doing it that way. And that just means that we'll keep on the same tenant landlord, you know, dichotomy that we have in Quebec. It's a very negative zero sum kind of game that we have going on here in the province, and that personally I really want to change. I want to change the narrative. I want to change the discourse between landlords and tenants. I mean, I'm part of a lot of groups, and there is some hostile speak out there. And but the problem is that a lot of that hostile speak comes from people that live in buildings owned by some of these bigger names, right? That are very just mechanical about their processes and, thank you next kind of mentality. And unfortunately, it really taints it for everybody else. So for the good people out there, if you are interested in it, just know that it is possible. You can make a plan to get there. You have to be diligent about your plan, though. It does take some sacrifice. It does take some compromise and some willpower, but it is possible. And I think that it's still a great asset class, and it will continue to appreciate. I mean, just with the housing crisis that we're seeing right now in Quebec, but is pretty much lived across Canada, we've got at least 900,000 units and backlog of what we need to build just in Quebec to make up for the housing shortage. So for the foreseeable future, I think they're saying we're at least 10 to 20 years, even in some projections, away from an equilibrium in terms of demand and supply. So it doesn't mean you're taking away a house for somebody else. The prices are where they are, and people can either afford them or they can't. But if you can, and you can maintain that asset, then you could still offer a safe, comfortable place for somebody else to live and make their home in the meantime while they're working on their plan for whatever it is they want in terms of home ownership or real estate, if that's part of their goals.
Exactly. We're a little bit over time, but it's such an interesting conversation. We still have a couple of things to go over. Angela, take me back to 2008. You were in the US then. Amazing times in 2008 back then. What happened to you? What was going on with you in 2008?
I was working abroad in the US. I had just moved to California actually, and I was on a 12-month assignment down there. And it took me between California and Florida. And while the entire economy collapsed, I remember I had a colleague streaming the news on his radio at his desk. And I just heard like the Lehman Brothers have gone bankrupt and have fallen, and the Lehman Brothers owned the company I was working at. So we're just sitting there like, well, what does that mean? Like, do we go home? Like, what's happening? So that was sort of the first domino that fell, and then everything else sort of just collapsed around us. And I remember living next to some new housing developments. And when I had first moved there, just I mean, a month or two before that announcement, houses were being sold for $430,000 ish, US dollars at the time. And I was just an hour outside of LA. And literally, like weeks after the Lehman Brothers collapse and all the banks started to kind of divulge the degree of the subprime loan crisis, all of these builders started to drop the prices on all of their homes. And I'm talking hundreds, right? Like new developments of hundreds of homes just sitting empty and going down to like $40,000,
I
like
remember.
semi-detached homes for $40,000, a stone's throw away. In Florida, I would go there, and my friend at the time was relocating there, and they were shopping for a home. So I was going around with them, and you know, they bought a short sale and that summer actually, and it was a house that was purchased for like 450,000, and they got it for 102. And I remember phone calls home. I'm like, Mom, Dad, you guys, we need to buy homes here. I was like, we need to, whatever it is, we all need to put some money and buy homes. Like, this is the time. And at the time, I had started listening to Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know if you're familiar with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy, but he was talking about the greatest shift in wealth. And I was all tied up in this economic meltdown. And I was thinking, like, wow, this is a real opportunity. And my parents were just like, what do you know about buying property in a foreign country? Like, you shouldn't do that. You don't even know if it's legal and like all these things, right? And here I am, like 23 years old, my little backpack, and I'm seeing all this opportunity around me, but they were just so scared. They're like, you can't put all your money into these houses in a foreign country. You don't know the first thing about it. You don't know the first thing about mortgages. And you know what? They were right. I didn't know the first thing about it, but I mean, I kind of figured shit out. I was comfortable with like, doing whatever it was that needed to be done. I was like, my God, there's so little down payment that's needed for these things. Like I could afford two or three. And then in 10 years, if these go back up to 400, like just insane. But I didn't. I didn't end up buying it because I was hung up on the what ifs, right? The projections from my parents not being educated about that. And I did not have anybody in my network that had invested abroad at that time. So it was a very foreign concept. And just looking back, it's one of the biggest regrets I have. If I can go back, if I could go back, I would go back and just buy it all up. But it was a very important moment for me. And I'd have to say that, during the pandemic that just happened, there was an opportunity for us to buy a place. And my husband was a little bit worried. He's like, I don't know, it's really uncertain. I was like, no. I was like, now is the time to buy. I was like, I've had this feeling before. I'm sitting back in California in 2008. I was like, we need to buy. And so we bought, and we're very happy that we bought at that time. And it's just with experience, obviously, there's 20 years difference between, almost 20 years difference between that time and my recent acquisition. But it took some willpower. Even my parents were still on their same song, bad idea, don't do it. Like, why do you need another one? And I was like, no, I have a really good feeling about this. The numbers make sense. I think it's good. We can handle it. Let's do it. But it's all about understanding, right? What's the level of risk? Am I able to make this investment? Is it a good opportunity? And then taking that risk. But sometimes you just got to push through some of those beliefs that could still kind of creep in on you.
Yeah. And back in 2008, Facebook was around, but we didn't have the Facebook communities that we have now. We didn't have all these, how to be a real estate investor type of groups like we do today. And the other thing is that you were in the US. So part of the reason why your parents were like, do you know what you're doing? Is because here in Canada, we really did not have that issue because our regulatory system is not the same as the US. Now, sometimes it's a pain in the ass because as someone being in finance, it's a lot of compliance, but it's there for a reason. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of
Exactly.
I's that need to be dotted, T's that need to be crossed. It's annoying when I have to, I feel bad having to ask clients, and you have to send me the proper statements and this, that, and the other thing. But it's done for a reason. And for those who are from here, who are been comparing what we're going through right now in Canada, they're comparing it to 2008. You have no clue. It is apples and
Oh,
oranges. It is so unbelievably different. Well,
for
we're going
sure.
through right now, you had brought it up, it's the lack of available housing. We need more houses, we need more homes. So part of what Chrystia Freeland announced last week, that's going to be officially released tomorrow in the federal budget, is aimed towards first home buyers. But when are these houses going to be built? So it's great that you could take $60,000 out of your RSP, but when is the delivery date of the home that you plan on purchasing? Are we waiting 2 years, 3 years? That's something that's happening now with some of my
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah,
So
exactly. No,
yeah.
for sure. It's a big concern in terms of the timing of all of the available housing that's out there. But some people just aren't even ready to make that purchase, right? They have to save up for the down payment or whatever financing that they need to acquire. There's still steps that they need to take. And that's why building that plan and defeating that inner ostrich where we want to ignore it, right? We're like, oh, we're the victims of these circumstances around us, but we always have a choice. We always have a choice. We can always take action and do the best that we can to try and achieve those goals. And again, you don't have to eat the elephant, right? You can start smaller. I like to think of real estate as a property ladder, right? We hear the career ladder where you're climbing up the ranks and gaining seniority and gaining experience. The same thing in property. You can start at the bottom. You can start with a small place. You can start with a condo. And then over time and with experience, you can keep climbing the ladder and have that money sort of work for you along the way. So it's not an all or nothing kind of industry, but you do need to be well informed and you do need to be actively involved in your own action plan toward achieving those goals. But I mean, surround yourself with the right people and always ask yourself, why not me? Why can't you do it? Why not you? Why couldn't you do it? What are those barriers that are stopping you from pursuing those goals? And then looking at each one of those barriers and seeing, hey, do I know somebody that can help me break this down? And find an alternate way of looking at this maybe or solving this complex problem that I have. But definitely start by, getting educated and surrounding yourself with the right people.
And last question. One piece of advice for people who want to invest in real estate, but they're like the 2008 version of Angela, who have those limiting beliefs. What would you tell these people?
Hang up the phone on your parents. No. Um, just send a voice.
Don't do that. Don't do
Don't
that.
do that. Don't do that. Yeah, no. Definitely acknowledge where they're coming from. But one piece of advice I'd have is, with all the information we have available to us today, is just start getting educated. Start digging into your interest, right? What are you interested in? Um, find the communities of people that are doing what it is that you want to do, and try and find someone or like 1 to 2 people that you can really work with and keep yourself accountable to on achieving these things, and who'll help each other out in this journey, right? Because there's things I'm sure everybody can contribute to these other folks just as much as they can contribute to you. But I think the key really is to start. Just start learning, start making those connections, and start working on your action plan. If you need somebody to help you like shatter a limiting belief, call me. Tell your mom you'll call her back and just call me. I'll help spin that all around. But the key is just to start and trust in yourself. And over time, as you check the boxes on some of those, little micro goals or micro steps, you'll start to build confidence in yourself and see that you can really do it, and then work towards something bigger.
And I lied, not my last question. My last question is, are those all your books?
These, yes, it's real. They're all my books, and I've read them all.
As Seinfeld said, they're real and they're fabulous.
They
So
are.
with that, this brings us to the end of our Facebook Live. Angela, thanks so much for joining us. How can my network, the ones we're watching from my end, how can they reach out to you?
Uh, Anybody can reach out to me by email. I think Lynn was going to put it on the post. You can find me on LinkedIn, Angela Negro, Montreal real estate broker. Yeah, and if you want my number, I'm happy to give it to you. But honestly, I've been through a lot, and if you're just looking for somebody that can help point you in the right direction, I'm happy to do that. So reach out.
Awesome. And listen, to end, we all have the ability to improve our financial situation. We all have the ability to generate wealth, except when it's just too late. But it all starts with a thought. It all starts with taking a risk. And don't let these limiting beliefs hold you back. My name is Lin Sok. If any of this hits you right here, if it resonates with you and you want to talk, reach out to myself, Lin at linsok.ca. Angela's email is in the comments as well. Everyone, have a great evening and see you next time.
Thanks, Lynn.